At 0857, just outside the Balashika military district, morning stillness fractured. Ukrainian F-16s came in low at 200 feet, flares trailing like white comets, while Neptune missiles arced in from nearly 100 miles away. Recon drones scrambled Russian radars, and Leopard UGVs crept toward fortified bunkers. It was not a warning shot. It was a full-spectrum breach aimed at Moscow's eastern gate. Within moments, command centers burned, fuel depots detonated, and air defenses blinked offline.
The aerial barrage opened space for the ground drive. PT-91 tanks rolled in from the southeast, engines grumbling through industrial ruins. At their flanks moved Leopard ground robots, compact UGVs with mine sensors and signal jammers. They disrupted sensor nets, sniffed out buried explosives, and fed fire coordinates back to rocket artillery waiting behind the line. Infantry flowed through maintenance corridors and shattered walkways, using FPV drones to peer around every corner and to mark choke points. The assault moved like a surgeon's blade, quiet, deliberate, and precise. Russian response was instant and brutal. T-80BV tanks and MTLB transports poured from northern alleys, throwing overlapping fields of fire between warehouses and cramped housing blocks. Urban geometry favored weight and numbers on paper, but the fight in the streets favored speed and adaptation. Ukrainian loitering munitions, guided by heat and motion, dove between buildings to strike relay trucks and relay nodes, shredding command cohesion. Close-quarters fights erupted. Shells ricocheted off rough concrete, drone motors screamed overhead, and every intersection became a micro-battlefield. Where the Russians sought to blunt the advance with brute force, Ukraine turned the city into a knife fight and dictated the timing. At 0932, Ukrainian armor and UGVs pushed deeper into Balashika's outskirts. Russia launched a counterpunch, a pair of Mi-35M gunships with Su-25 strike support streaming from a nearby base. They dove low and hard toward the spearhead near a ruined tram depot, intent on shredding the PT-91s. But the newly deployed Iris TLS detection array had eyes. Recon drones had eyes. 2 missiles rose and found the incoming rotors. In under 90 seconds, both gunships cartwheeled into the tree line in flames. The regional sky, already crowded, convulsed. The surviving Su-25s hugged treetops and roofs, trying to thread corridors that radar couldn't see. They met F-16s circling at altitude, AIM-120s reaching beyond visual range. One Russian jet peeled off, flares blooming, while another took a direct hit and spun into a warehouse district. The afternoon sky over Balashika became layered. Low scouts skimming rooflines, interceptors high and patient, jets screaming through the middle. It became a three-dimensional slaughterhouse, brutal, fast, decisive. With every downed chopper and aborted sortie, Ukraine tightened its dome of air denial over the corridor. Even so, the ground fight hardened. From the west, 2 S-3 Akatsiya howitzers and BM-30 Smerch batteries laid down thunderous barrages to crack Ukrainian logistics. The first salvos cratered roads and overturned supply trucks. A mobile Ukrainian EW unit burned near a refuel point. A steel and flame wall threatened to freeze Ukrainian momentum, but the battle had become algorithmic. Eyes in the sky fed digits and geometry to guns on the ground. Recon drones with thermal optics tracked launch arcs, triangulated plume signatures, and painted battery positions. Counter-battery doctrine executed in minutes. RM-70 Vampire systems outside rocket range launched coordinated 122mm salvos, while kamikaze J-22 drones threaded through smoke to strike command nodes. Within 7 minutes, 2 artillery teams were wrecked, ammunition cooking off, launchers burning. The rear fire screen collapsed, supply corridors unclogged. Ukraine's tempo accelerated. With artillery suppressed, Ukraine aimed for the nerve center, a suspected Russian command post concealed beneath Building 8 in the urban core. Rather than a broad infantry hammer, they opted for precision, Under smoke and ECM cover, a small special operations team infiltrated through drainage culverts and service stairwells. Tiny bird-sized drones slipped through windows and vents, feeding thermal maps to handsets. Robotic demolition units, four-wheeled bots carrying shaped charges, rolled into position. At 10:41 a.m., controlled explosions collapsed key sublevels. The structure above remained standing, but the underground nodes, encrypted racks, relay boxes, and radio cores were crushed. Communications in the sector went dark, vehicles repositioned without orders. In a quarter of an hour, the enemy's nerve was severed. The Russian reaction from the north was predictable and furious. Concealed staging zones 6 miles north disgorged a column of T-80Bs and towed artillery in a broad pincer aimed to split the Ukrainian axis. Their plan? Push hard while Kyiv consolidated gains. But the Ukrainians had set traps. FPV teams ran ultra-low approaches, 10 to 15 feet off the ground, popping up to hammer lead vehicles before they reached intersections. 3 Russian tanks were disabled before they reached the outer ring. Those that advanced ran into a triangle clamp tactic, ambush fires from perpendicular alley cuts, while infantry with ATGMs punished exposed flanks. An attempted flank through an industrial lot hit UGV-laid minefields and gridlocked the column. Helicopter support faltered under persistent EW interference, and by the time air cover engaged, Iris-T batteries had already shot down a chopper and forced another to abort. In less than 30 minutes, the northern push collapsed into retreat. Abandoned tanks smoked in the streets, trucks burned, and infantry scattered. Ukraine had not only blunted the counterattack, it had absorbed and turned it into a killing zone. The initiative slipped from Moscow's grasp. As Russian forces attempted to fall back, Ukraine tightened the net. Buval and Banshee EW vehicles moved into pre-planned jamming positions and severed outbound Russian comms. Radio, satellite, encrypted relays, all fell into silence. Neptune drones performed deception loops along retreat axes, spoofing radar returns and creating the illusion of armor where none existed. In the confusion, friendly fire incidents occurred. Russian crews fired on their own convoys, mistaking them for UAVs. From rooftops and stairwells, Ukrainian squads established overwatch on the M7 highway, building kill zones. Snipers and grenade teams picked off exposed crews. What had begun as an orderly withdrawal became a rout.